Understanding words is what you really need to start doing. You need to start doing your homework and understanding words. If you put an S in front of words, it becomes swords. And that's what words are. They're cutting. They can cause you great trouble. Humans are word-controlled creatures. So we need to establish what words mean, because there is a world of occultism that is operating today throughout the world, in which you use certain words, and when those words are used in a court, they don't mean the same thing at all.
Words cast spells. This ancient expression captures a power many overlook, the profound impact of what we say, think, or hear. Could words, beyond being mere symbols, carry a real force capable of shaping our reality like spells cast into the air? From ancient magicians to modern philosophers, magic, both literal and metaphorical, has been wielded to create or destroy, to transform or control. But what if this power isn't just an ancestral mystery? What if it remains active in our daily choices, ready to turn doubt into purpose, chaos into order, and conflict into balance? What happens when we awaken to this truth? Ceremonial magic has never been just a collection of rituals or an exercise in power. Since ancient times, it has reflected humanity's desire to understand the invisible, to access what lies beyond the senses. For many, it is a practice blending science, spirituality, and art, a way to communicate with the forces shaping the universe. But there's something profoundly human about this practice, the desire for control. When we examine magical traditions, we find they revolve around a fundamental question. Can we truly shape the world around us? Or are we merely part of something greater, something we may never fully comprehend? Throughout history, ceremonial magicians believed in the power of words and symbols. Words were not merely sounds but carriers of intention, like spells cast into the air, shaping the reality of those who wielded them. Every gesture, every carefully chosen word was part of a deep dialogue between the practitioner and the cosmos. And for ceremonial magicians, this dialogue wasn't just a quest for answers, it was a path to self-discovery. Have you ever considered the weight of the words you use every day? The ancients believed that each word carried energy, capable of building or destroying. That's why rituals were so meticulous, and the magician's discipline was so essential. Before attempting to shape the external world, the practitioner had to master their internal world, their emotions, intentions, and desires. But like any powerful practice, ceremonial magic also came with risks. When used without balance or ethics, it could become a weapon. Over time, its practice was corrupted. What began as a quest for harmony often devolved into a means of manipulation and dominance. This corruption reflects something larger about humanity. How often do we turn tools for growth into instruments of control? How often do our intentions get lost in the pursuit of power? The history of ceremonial magic mirrors our greatest aspirations and our greatest failures. This journey takes us back in time to places like Atlantis and Egypt, civilizations that witnessed both the pinnacle and the downfall of these practices. What happened in these places is not just history, it's a warning. It reflects what occurs when balance is replaced by ambition. Atlantis, a name that conjures images of an advanced civilization brimming with knowledge and mysteries. For many, it is a story lost to time. Yet, according to ancient traditions, it was a place where ceremonial magic reached both its zenith and its ruin. Atlantis was described as a hub of wisdom, where magicians used their connection to the unseen to bring harmony to society. But, as often happens, the desire for power began to corrupt the practice. It's said that dark magicians emerged in Atlantis. They sought neither balance nor enlightenment, but control. They manipulated natural and spiritual forces to reshape the world according to their desires. Imagine living in a society where those who understand the forces of the unseen use them to impose their will. That was the beginning of the end. The unchecked ambition led to destruction, a lesson that still echoes as a warning. When Atlantis' traditions reached Egypt, they carried both their wisdom and their dangers. In ancient Egypt, a land of gods, pharaohs, and monumental temples, ceremonial magic found fertile ground. Initially, it sought to align humanity with divine forces. Rituals were meticulous, and sacred words were chosen with care. Priests were seen as mediators between the human and the divine. Yet slowly, Atlantis' pattern began to repeat itself. Priests, once keepers of spiritual growth, monopolized the knowledge. Ceremonial magic became an exclusive system accessible only to a select few. A caste of power arose, where spirituality was wielded as a tool of control. And the people, they were distanced from the essence of the rituals and plunged into superstition. Symbols that once inspired reflection became objects of blind worship. Words that should have enlightened were twisted to intimidate. A practice meant to elevate the spirit turned into a mechanism for maintaining power in the hands of a few. Even the pharaoh, considered a divine figure, became a pawn in a larger system controlled by the priests. Have you ever thought about how this mirrors the modern world? When knowledge is hoarded by a few and used to manipulate the many, history repeats itself. Whether through ceremonial magic or modern systems of power, the result is the same. A relentless pursuit of control replaces a genuine connection with purpose. The history of magic in Egypt is as much a tale of potential as it is of danger. It reminds us that when balance is lost, what should be liberated can quickly become a tool of oppression. Ceremonial magic, which began as a path to self-discovery and harmony, became a weapon of domination. And the cost of this corruption was immense, not just for society, but for the very essence of the practice. In both Atlantis and Egypt, the lesson is clear. Power without ethics inevitably leads to downfall. But what does this mean for us today? Have we learned from these mistakes? Or do we continue to repeat the same patterns, merely in different forms? It's a question that echoes, challenging us to reflect on how we use the power we hold, whether spiritual, social, or personal. These cycles of rise and corruption lead us to the next critical point, the specific dangers of using magic to manipulate, disregarding the consequences. The terrain of dark magic offers somber lessons that still affect us today. Now, imagine for a moment, what drives someone to seek control over forces they cannot fully understand? Dark magic stems from this impulse, a desire to bend the mysteries of the universe to one's own will. But like a fire that both warms and burns, this path is fraught with danger. Unlike ceremonial magic, which seeks harmony, dark magic functions like a pact. It's not about aligning with the cosmos, but forcing it to obey. The price, however, is almost always higher than the practitioner expects. Throughout history, there are records and myths of magicians who lost everything by manipulating forces beyond their grasp. One prominent example is the legend of Dr. Faustus. This figure, who lived in the 16th century, is surrounded by stories blending fact and fiction. Faustus was a scholar who sought to surpass the limits of human knowledge. Dissatisfied with what traditional methods could teach him, he is said to have made a pact with dark forces, offering his soul in exchange for unlimited power and wisdom. According to the legend, he was assisted by a demon named Mephistopheles, who granted his wishes. But, as with all dealings with the supernatural, there was a price. When the pact's term ended, Faustus was allegedly taken by forces he could not control. This story, popularized by works like Goethe's Faust, is not just a cautionary tale. It also reflects what happens when the human desire for control crosses ethical and spiritual boundaries. Faustus symbolizes those who seek shortcuts, ignoring the consequences. And he is not alone. During the Middle Ages, some Kabbalists who veered away from spiritual principles and delved into dark magic met similar fates. Many believed they could control elemental spirits to gain immediate power. However, these practices often led to unintended consequences, including personal tragedies, psychological strain, or persistent encounters with entities unwilling to return to their realms. Why is dark magic so dangerous? Perhaps because it attracts forces that feed on imbalance and ego. Unlike practices aimed at harmony, dark magic is transactional. Something is given in exchange for something desired. But these forces rarely fulfill their promises without consequences. They exploit human weaknesses, often leading practitioners to ruin. Think about what drives someone to walk this path. It's the desire for the impossible, power, wealth, revenge, or even immortality. But what do these promises truly deliver? The story of Faustus and many others teaches us that the price of absolute control is the loss of oneself. And yet, dark magic continues to allure. Perhaps it's the fascination with shortcuts, with power seemingly out of reach by conventional means. But there's always an irony. In the end, those who sought to control these forces often become enslaved by them. If these stories teach us anything, it's that the desire to manipulate the invisible comes at a greater cost than imagined. And this is not confined to the past. Echoes of this pursuit are present in modern practices, less mystical but equally manipulative. That is where we turn our attention next. Have you ever stopped to think about how the desire to manipulate invisible forces never really disappeared? Although today's world is dominated by science and technology, the same principles that fueled dark magic remain, albeit under new names and forms. The pursuit of control, power, and influence is as alive as ever. It manifests in subtler ways. Consider, for example, modern psychological manipulation techniques like prosperity psychology or high-pressure sales tactics. These systems promise something irresistible: power over one's destiny, control over others, and access to wealth and success. But if we look closer, what they really do is exploit our deepest desires and often our insecurities. It's not so different from what dark magicians did when trying to control spiritual forces for immediate gain. At their core, these practices operate much like dark magic. They rely on exchanges, time, energy, and even integrity in return for quick results. The idea that one can program the mind or attract wealth as if casting a modern-day spell carries an uncomfortable truth. The cost of this kind of control is often the loss of something essential. Perhaps it's authenticity, perhaps it's inner balance, or maybe it's something harder to name but deeply felt when absent. And it's not just individuals drawn to these practices. Companies, leaders, and entire organizations sometimes adopt strategies echoing the same logic. In the corporate world, for instance, the obsession with controlling outcomes, markets, and even consumer emotions can become all-consuming. Persuasive sales tactics, aggressive marketing, and exaggerated transformation promises are contemporary ways of trying to shape reality, just as the magicians of old performed their rituals. The difference is that today, we don't summon spirits to achieve these goals. We summon data and algorithms and refine psychological strategies. However, the intention remains the same: to shape the external world to fit our desires, often without considering the broader impact. What do we lose in the process? What do we sacrifice when we seek control over others and ourselves? The most intriguing aspect is how these practices manage to attract so many. Just like the dark magic of the past, they offer seductive promises: wealth, power, and instant happiness. But what do they really deliver, and what price are we willing to pay? it's a question worth reflecting on. At its core, the connection between these modern practices and the ancient forms of dark magic reminds us of something fundamental about human nature. Our tendency to seek shortcuts to success can lead us down dangerous paths, even when those shortcuts seem perfectly acceptable on the surface. And, like the ancient magicians, we end up discovering that total control is often an illusion. But there's another side to this story, a path that doesn't seek manipulation, but harmony. Some see power not as something to be conquered, but as something to be understood and balanced. While the pursuit of power and control dominates much of human history, there is another path, one that does not see the universe as something to manipulate, but as something to collaborate with harmoniously. This is where ceremonial magic finds its highest purpose, as a means to explore the unseen world with respect, responsibility, and ethical intent. Unlike dark magic, which often feeds on selfish desires, true ceremonial magic is a practice of balance. It begins with a simple but profound question. What does it mean to be in tune with the forces around us? For those who practice it earnestly, the answer lies in understanding that power is not something to possess, but something to share. It is a force that flows when aligned with what is natural and universal. Think of it as learning to swim in a river. You could try to control the flow of water, but this would only exhaust you. Or you could learn to move with the current, understanding its strength and subtleties. Ceremonial magic teaches this second path. It's about recognizing that we are part of something greater, and that our individual strength is intertwined with this larger whole. This practice demands discipline. It's not just about performing rituals or reciting sacred words, but about shaping one's own character. Esoteric orders, such as Freemasonry or the Rosicrucian tradition, emphasize that true power comes from self-mastery, the ability to govern one's own thoughts, emotions, and actions. It is a process that begins within and extends outward into the world. More than that, ceremonial magic centers ethics at the center of everything. Before any ritual, the practitioner must ask, "What is my intention?" This matters because, according to its principles, the universe responds not just to our actions but to our intentions. Seeking something for personal gain without considering its impact on others, or the natural balance, is seen as a dangerous deviation. Interestingly, these ideas are not exclusive to ceremonial magic. Many spiritual traditions around the world share similar concepts. Taoism, for instance, emphasizes living in harmony with the natural flow of things, while Buddhism advocates acting with compassion and mindfulness. The message seems universal. The goal is not to control the world, but to align with it. How does this apply to our daily lives? It may start with how we approach our choices. When we make decisions, are we focused solely on fulfilling our immediate desires? Or are we considering how those choices affect others and the balance around us? It's a question that may seem simple, but carries profound implications. In this context, the practice of ceremonial magic is a reminder that power in itself is neither good nor bad. What matters is how we choose to use it. Perhaps this is the most valuable lesson. True power doesn't come from forcing the universe to obey our will, but from finding our own harmony within it. This leads us to one final reflection. If power can be a force for balance, what does it teach us about our role in the world? Perhaps the answer lies at the intersection of the human and the cosmic, a space where ethics and spirituality become inseparable. That is where we journey next. The story of ceremonial magic is, in reality, a story about us. From the ancient rituals in Atlantis to the corrupted practices of Egypt, it reflects our greatest desires and our greatest mistakes. More than a spiritual practice or a system of power, ceremonial magic is a mirror that reveals how we deal with what we do not fully understand, the unknown. Think about it. What is magic if not a way to seek control in an apparently chaotic universe? But here is the truth many forget. Control is an illusion. The power we attempt to manipulate outside of ourselves is, in fact, a reflection of what we carry within. When we use this power without balance and ethics, we create the opposite of what we seek. Throughout history, ceremonial magic has been distorted, turning into a means of manipulation, but it also carries a profound lesson that true power lies not in controlling external forces, but in transforming ourselves. This lesson spans centuries, reaching into the present. Have you noticed how, even in our modern world, we still seek the same things that ceremonial magicians sought? Control, harmony, purpose, but we pursue them in different ways. Our words, actions, and intentions continue to shape our reality, just as spells and rituals did in the past. The words we use are powerful tools, or spells if you will, that can build or destroy. This brings us to an important question. How are we using this power today? Are we seeking harmony, or are we trying to impose our will on others? Are we creating balance or perpetuating imbalance? These questions are not just philosophical musings, they are calls to action. In the end, the power we have is defined by how we choose to wield it. Ceremonial magic teaches us that everything is interconnected. Our choices, big or small, create ripples that affect the world around us. This is not just a spiritual concept, it's a practical truth. Every word we speak, every action we take, shapes our world in ways we may not always realize. And now it's up to you to decide. What will you do with the power you have? The choices we make every day, no matter how small they seem, are opportunities to create or destroy. What are you building with the words you release into the world? This is the deepest magic and the most challenging. Every change begins with understanding your role as a co-creator. The only way to connect with this divine intelligence is through meditation. We've developed a set of audio tools to help you access this higher state of consciousness. To learn more and gain immediate access, click the link on the screen or in the comments. If this resonates with you, write in the comments, "It made sense to me."